Hello everyone. Today I'm baking the easiest artisanal style bread recipe that I know, and it will give you a ciabatta-like look and taste, chewy yet crispy crust, and lots of holes. Ciabatta is not hard to make either. You can make a pre-ferment the night before, so this is a similar idea. We're going to start our bread the night before, but don't worry, that part should only take you about 5 minutes once you get into the rhythm of this. Really, 5 minutes to gather your four ingredients and mix them all together. So let's get to it. It is 6:30 in the evening and I have my four ingredients here. Flour, I'm using all-purpose flour. You can use bread flour and get the same result in my opinion. Next, I need dry active yeast, salt, and water. Oh, and a scale or measuring cups and spoons. You can use either, but the scale is obviously more accurate. And even though this dough is very forgiving, you're better off using a scale. I've done this both ways and it comes out great both ways, measuring accurately with a scale or using cups and spoons, but I have more consistency and better results using a scale. Okay, let's start with 355 grams of lukewarm water. That's 1.5 cups of water. I have here 356 grams, so it's good. I'm not going to worry about 1 gram of extra water, and neither should you. Make sure the water is not so hot that you burn yourself. You'll kill the yeast that way. Just lukewarm, not more than 110 degrees Fahrenheit or 45 degrees Celsius. Next, add to it 1 teaspoon, which is 3 grams of active dry yeast. Now, note some recipes you see might add less than a teaspoon, but then they refrigerate the dough for up to 3 days or they leave it out to ferment for up to 24 hours. If you use 3 grams like I do in this recipe, which is about a teaspoon, then your dough will be ready the next morning, 12 to 14 hours later. Both recipes work fine, but if you're following this easy recipe here, then measure 1 teaspoon or 3 grams of yeast. Next comes the flour, and I'm adding 450 grams of all-purpose flour. That's 3 3/4 cups of flour. But another note here, if you scoop and level off the measuring cup, then you get about 120 grams of flour in a cup. But if you scoop and pack it in a bit, then you could get as much as 150 grams of flour in a cup, depending on how you pack it. See why a scale is a better way to go? I ended up adding a little more flour, trying to get it to exactly 450, but I went over to 456 grams, and as you'll see, it really doesn't matter a few grams more or less of flour. Next is the salt, and you can adjust this to your taste more or less. It won't affect the end result, only the taste. I use 2 teaspoons, which is around 10 grams of salt. Next, I mix this all together, just enough so that there are no dry patches of flour. Everything is incorporated, and then I cover it tight with plastic wrap and leave it overnight to ferment. Now it's the next morning. It's 13 hours later. You can start looking at this as early as 10 hours later, and you should be able to see that the dough has risen and covered with bubbles. Beautiful. This is how it should look. Now we're going to do one stretch and fold to give the dough some structure. You'll actually feel the dough changing as you do this. The dough is sticky, so dip your fingers in some water and now grab a hold of one edge and stretch it up and over to the other side. Turn the bowl 90 degrees. So if this is a clock and you just did 12 o'clock, then turn the bowl to 3 o'clock and do the same thing. Grab the end and stretch it and fold it over, and then at 6 o'clock, and then again at 9 o'clock. You'll feel that the dough is getting more elastic as you're doing this, which is great. Do this 2 or 3 times, then cover the bowl with plastic wrap. And now we're going to leave it for between 1 and 2 hours. 2 hours is better, but don't let it completely double in size, more like 1.5 times in size. Here it is 1.5 hours later, and you can see that the dough has risen about 1.5 times, not double, and there are new bubbles on top. Great. Now I'm going to flour my board generously, scrape the dough onto that, and dust some more flour on top. Now I'm taking the sides up to the middle all around to make this into a ball shape. This is going to be the bottom of the bread ball. So then I turn it over and roll it against my hand to get it to form a ball, but also to tighten up the skin on top of the dough. Next, I crumple up some parchment paper and then unfold it. This way it doesn't roll up on me, it stays put. And then I put the dough on the parchment paper and cover it with a bowl to rest while I preheat the oven. I'm putting the oven on 450 Fahrenheit, which is 232 degrees Celsius. And I have here my trusty Dutch oven, and that's going in the oven at 450 for an hour while the dough ball is resting. Okay, here it is an hour later. The Dutch oven is extremely hot, and the dough ball is going in there with the parchment paper. Cover the pot with the lid, and that's going to bake in there for 30 minutes with the lid on, and then another 30 minutes with the lid off. Now it's 30 minutes later, and wow, that is beautiful, but not quite done. Off comes the lid, and now we're going to bake this for another 30 minutes. So now the dough ball has been in the oven 30 minutes covered and another 30 minutes uncovered, and look at that, what a beauty. As tempting as it might be, this baked beauty has to rest a bit and cool before cutting into it. So let's wait until it cools down. You should wait until bread cools before cutting it while it's still warm. The bread is soft and really hard to cut, but also cutting hot bread disrupts the natural moisture distribution, and that can result in a gummy texture and cause the bread to dry out faster. So as tempting as it is, wait until the bread has cooled. And it's been about 2 hours, so let's see what we have here. And wow, look at that. Just beautiful and delicious. It's moist, chewy, and crunchy all at the same time. I think I could have left this loaf in the oven an extra couple of minutes, but it's still great. Try this recipe, you won't be disappointed. Bon appetit, and thanks for watching.